Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here, and welcome back to Overwatch, or /Overwatch League. This is going to be a very general video about Overwatch, so it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. What is the elephant in the room? Well, that is roll lock, or roll queue, or roll select, or basically 2-2-2, depending on what you look at. Now, there have been a lot of rumours recently. Jeff Kaplan has been alluding to big changes coming to Overwatch. Slasher, the well-known insider and esports analyst, also had some stuff to say that there was big changes coming to Overwatch, but not just Overwatch, Overwatch League as well. Now, a lot of what they have been saying, more Slasher than Jeff, it alludes to a roll lock. It alludes to roll a queue or roll lock. Now, what would we expect from this? Now, from the gist of what we can get here, it seems like they would trial it in Overwatch League first, and then roll it out to competitive, which is something they haven't really done before. They've never trialed it in the league and then rolled it out to us. It's normally rolled out to us and then in the league. There are benefits and drawbacks to locking teams to 2-2-2, and I think it's time to finally look at that. So, the elephant in the room obviously is Goats. Goats has been dominant for a year now, pretty much. And obviously Goats is not 2-2-2, it's 3 tanks and 3 supports in general. Sometimes you can have a variation of the Goats or 3-3, which turns into 2-1-3, which is Ryan Zarya with a Sombra, and 3 supports dropping the D.Va. Now, in both of those cases, you couldn't play that in a roll lock. You just couldn't. So, another point for a roll lock is obviously they could change it in the future, but I don't see that actually happening. If the game was to be forced 2-2-2 at both the pro level and the ladder level, it would be much easier to balance the game. But this would be a massive, massive shift to the game. Now, I don't see that being implemented in the middle of a competitive season. We've recently gone into a new competitive season on ladder, so what I would assume, and there's been a lot of rumours about this, that this might come in for Stage 3 of the Overwatch League, which is a big change in just 2 weeks. And then if it was to work in Overwatch League, I don't think it wouldn't, in some respects. They'd then roll it out after this season of ladder competitive, because I don't see that changing in mid-season. That would be way too harsh. So what could we see if we go back to 2-2-2? Now, I think a lot of us will remember the days before Goats. Some of you maybe not, but obviously before Goats, what caused Goats to be introduced was Brigitte, the new support, who could shut down Dive. Now, Dive was the meta we had before Goats. Dive essentially is a Winston, a D.Va, Genji, Tracer, Zenyatta, and a Lucio. That was generally Dive. You could vary it, you could have different DPS, or you could have different supports, but generally you always had a Lucio, and you always had the Winston D.Va, because you can't dive if you're not Winston D.Va, really. There is an exception to that now. It's obviously Wrecking Ball or Hammond. He can do a similar role to D.Va. But the thing is with Hammond is the fact that he doesn't have Defense Matrix. And D.Va has pretty much been in every comp since the start of the game. Well, near enough. Because of her Defense Matrix. And I don't think that'll ever change. We could go back to Dive. And that would be interesting. In my opinion, that's better to watch than Goats, and that's another thing we'll come on to in a minute. Or we end up in a bunker comp, which would obviously be Orisa, Baptiste, Bastion, either a Hog or a D.Va, I would say, definitely not Zarya. Zarya is a big loser if we go back to 2-2-2. Yeah, those sorts of comps, and that would be interesting. We kind of see that comp already though on Paris, my most hated map in the game. So bunker comp is nothing new. Things we don't really see anymore is dive. Simply because it's shut down so effectively. And why perhaps do we think that roll queue is coming so much now rather than before? Well, it's been called for from some people for a long time. I wanted it a lot originally as well. It's because goats, they've tried to stop goats. They've done everything in their power to try and stop goats. Let's be honest, we've seen the previous major balance patches which have buffed Reaper, and I think it was a desperate attempt to stop goats coming into the Overwatch League, and it failed. No one at Overwatch League level plays Reaper apart from Shurk, and that's not very often anyway. The reason is because Reaper's teleport is trash. It's very hard to get Reaper into the fight. His teleport's been buffed on live now, but it's still trash. You cannot get Reaper into the fight effectively at high levels. He just gets killed immediately. Reaper, otherwise, if he could get into the fight, would be a massive counter to goats, but he just can't get there. So, without a ridiculous counter, goats has just thrived. And the only counter we've seen to goats is triple DPS. Again, wouldn't be possible in a 2-2-2 roll lock. Obviously, this would have implications for Wrecking Ball / Hammond, because if he doesn't get used in dive comp, which I think is unlikely considering how powerful the defense matrix of D.Va is, then it affects Wrecking Ball's pick rate. That's for sure. I would imagine. It would affect Zarya's pick rate very highly, and also Reinhardt's pick rate. Reinhardt and Zarya were in bad places before goats. They weren't used all that much in terms of pick rate, and we would go back to that. And it would be interesting, but the only reason I would see you using a Rein Zarya combo is perhaps on King's Row. It was always quite powerful on that map. I don't really know apart from that. King's Row. You might use it to try and stop damage coming in on Paris on first point, because it's most likely there will be bunker run on that. And what worries me about that also is with the elimination of goats and the elimination of triple DPS Hammond, would that make bunker ridiculously powerful on Paris? I think it would. How do you counteract bunker if you've got two tanks which can't deal an enormous amount of damage? Dive, perhaps you'd have to get very, very skilled at it, but it would be difficult. So there's pros and cons to this. Going into, I could go on for a year about it. It's ridiculous. But at the end of the day, why would they want to implement this? Well, goats, and in a lot of people's eyes, has had an impact on Overwatch League viewing figures. And the reason is because it's not as exciting to see a Weir make a dink heads, or a McCree dink, or I don't know, Zenyatta popping off, stuff like that. Although we do still see Zens popping off. Yes, Jonak. It's not as prominent as it was last year. You don't get those really blinding plays. All you get is a Zarya grab and everyone dies. Which was always the big problem with Zarya. Zarya grab, and going back to the days before goats, the problem was you always knew what was going to happen if you were playing Rein Zarya. You'd get a Hanzo, and it would be Zarya ults, Hanzo ults, everyone's dead, reset. There's no push-pull in terms of fights. One pick, then the opposition gets a pick and all that. It wasn't really like that with Zarya, and that's how it is with goats generally. You know they've got loads of ults, they're going to wipe the team, and they're going to move the payload, or they're going to get the point. It's just even some teams will go to the fact of just poking and building their ults, and then going in and using all their ults. That's how goats works at times. So the argument for the Overwatch League is it's worse to watch than last year, and its effective viewing figures. So locking them to 2-2-2 would eliminate GOATs, it would eliminate heavy DPS comps, and it would probably force the pros, for the meanwhile, back to dive, which is what we saw early in the inaugural season. So, and the pros obviously know how to play dive very well, since we were in it for ages anyway. It would also have an effect on how good some teams are as well. If you went back to 2-2-2, you probably see a resurgence from London. You probably see a resurgence from the Philadelphia Fusion. A bit of a resurgence for Houston, but there's going to be a dedicated video to the Houston Outlaws coming up very soon. There's stuff going on. Then, would Vancouver do as well? I think San Francisco would be alright. New York Excelsior would benefit highly because you'd be able to see Pine again and people like that. So it would have a major effect on the league. A major effect. In competitive ladder, it's a godsend. I mean, let's be honest. We are fed up with 4 DPS. Not because it's a meta we've chosen, it's because people won't flex. And Overwatch was always a game that was meant for you to flex, counterpick your opposition to win the game. And unfortunately, a lot of people on ranked just won't do that. They will one trick, which is not what Blizzard originally intended for Overwatch. But unfortunately, it's the reality we're in. I see one trick Moiras, I see one trick Symmetras, Torbjorns, Orissas. Yes, who would one trick Orisa? I don't know. Although, to be quite honest, for the amount of CC in the game, I can't blame you. There's one tricks everything. I've been a one trick before. I used to be a Diva one trick, and I've been a Reinhardt one trick, and now I'm more of a flex player. But it's the way the game works, and to be quite honest, to get really good at one hero, you have to one trick it for some time to get really good at it. So that's the problem. Now, it would alleviate some toxicity issues if it was forced. Not role preference. This is not what we're talking about here. This is not, I want to play, say like not the role queue, but the team queue that we've got now. I can't remember its name, but you say, I'm going to play DPS, and my team say we've got a tank player, we've got a support player, but that isn't fixed. You don't have to play those heroes. You've just preferred to play those heroes. This is what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is actual fixed. You won't be able to play DPS if you're a tank player. You won't be able to select them. So it really does limit a lot of things. And who would be the big benefit heroes out of this? Well, obviously Winston Diva would be. Genji would be a big benefit. Tracer, Widowmaker would probably have a lot of benefits from this. The support line really wouldn't change all that much. A big loser would be Brigitte, because most pros, if not all pros, will say, we won't play Brigitte in a 2 support comp. She's not a 2 support comp hero. She's a 3 support comp hero. So they just won't play her. Brigitte will die in the pro scene if we go 2-2-2, because they won't play her. Another big winner would be perhaps Pharah, because Pharah would be used to counter Genji Tracer. Anything we saw in stage 1 or 2 of the Overwatch League's inaugural season is going to benefit, pretty much. Losers, Zarya, Reinhardt, people like that. So, yeah, 2-2-2 is interesting. And if we do see it in Stage 3 of the Overwatch League, expect things to absolutely turn on its head, because it will just change massively. It doesn't matter what maps you're on. It will change, because GOATs, it won't just be dead because of balancing, it will be dead. You won't be able to pick GOATs. And that is, I mean, the devs always said originally they didn't want to force meta. Well, devs, you've done it before. The introduction of Brigitte forced the meta. It forced dive out. And I will say that is by request of the community. A lot of people got fed up with Dive, and then he got dumped with goats. So I think that's a lesson. Don't moan about some things, because what could be coming around the corner could be a lot worse. Stage 3 of the Overwatch League is going to be interesting regardless. But if we do get forced into a 2-2 meta, then expect it to be wild. Absolutely wild. And how will San Francisco and Vancouver react, the two best teams in the league right now? It will be extremely interesting. 2-2-2 could be coming to us very soon. It'll be interesting to see, and perhaps we will review it if Stage 3 does turn out like that. This is all rumours. Nothing's been confirmed. But they are very strong rumours right now. So, I'm going to leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.